Hello and welcome to TFT on Two Wheels. As always, I am your host, Mike. Today's episode, Empathy, as part of my BLC keynote on empathy. Good afternoon, everyone. Still somewhere in Pennsylvania, not quite sure where. Still having a great drive. The bike's doing well, luggage is doing well, I'm doing well. It's absolutely gorgeous out here. I hope the video does it justice. There's a good breeze going. I mean, to me it feels like it's in the mid-70s. I don't know what the temperature actually is, but it feels good. It feels really good to be out on the bike. My butt's holding up pretty well for being this far into the journey. So the third video here in this little mini motovlog series is on empathy, finally. And what does empathy look like when you're able to reach that level? And I know there's teachers out there that reach this level and they do things at an empathetic base, and it's amazing. And I suppose what I want to add to the conversation today, or what I really want to think about in my own head as I talk to you guys, is where does that empathy fit in? Where do we start it? How do we do something empathetic that then leads the rest of the year? As I said in my keynote, if you saw it, or if you saw the recap video, I hope I said it in there too. For a long time I looked at empathy as a destination, as a point to reach. And I felt once I reached that point, I was there, I didn't have to think about it anymore. But it's not like that. And you know, it's the old biker cliche of it's not the destination, it's the journey. Empathy is much like that too. It's always a journey. It's a continuous process. It's not, hey, I did something empathetic. What's next? It's something you have to keep thinking about, which is a good thing because our minds need that. At least mine does. In an empathetic classroom, we have perspective and compassion combined, okay? Perspective and compassion combined. We understand the world through our kids' eyes. We understand it's going to look different to each of them. We're compassionate to what those lives are like and to how they learn and to what they learn. And once we as teachers understand that and ingrain it in ourselves and how we teach, you'll find student ownership increases exponentially. Kids become part of the classroom. They're not just in the classroom. They're not just observers. They're participants. They're creators. They're making the class with you. It's just all of you in a room learning. And one of the ways that Garth and I would do this in our classroom that we found very successful is through essential questions or enduring questions. And we would have our kids write the essential questions that our class would try to solve or look at throughout the year. And this was a long process. It usually took a week, maybe longer, because we found that by the time our students got to 7th grade, they really didn't understand questioning very well. They forgot how to ask good questions. So we would have to talk first about open and closed questions, or, you know, factual questions. What's your name? Just the facts, ma'am, Sergeant Friday. Open questions, or those essay questions, short answer questions. And then once the kids really understood what those were, we could work on essential questioning. I'll link to the blog in the description here so you can read about that whole process and what that looked like and some of the activities that we used to get kids to understand these different types of questions. But the point is, the goal is once those questions are written by the students, then the rest of the class is going to be directly influenced by those questions. So your kids are creating what you're doing. Now, it's within your state standards or within your scope and sequence, or however you want to say it. So, you know, there's always that framework, which is okay. You can't have a beautiful house if they don't frame it right before you decorate it. So once you have those essential questions, and you're always coming back to those, then when you dig into a unit of study or a chapter, it doesn't just become information. It becomes, how is this directly or indirectly related to those essential questions? How is it essential to your life? How is it going to help you understand things and look at the world? And that starts to change the dynamic very, very quickly of a classroom. The next big piece, the next thing that I really like, is this idea of autonomous learning. And you know, when we talk about blended learning, one of those cliches I can't stand, pace, path, and place are the three things you want kids to own and to have more control over. Pace of an assignment, how quickly they can complete it, meaning can they keep going on parts if they already know it. The path. Are all the kids doing the exact same thing to get to the exact same goal? And place. Can they only learn in my classroom? Okay, can they only learn in the library? What is that place? How much control do the kids have on that? So autonomous mastery learning is this little phrase that Garth and I use to describe the web quests, medieval web quests, and some other assignments that our students would do in our class. And, you know, these were curricularly based, of course, but the students really did work that was very individualized, very personalized. So the idea of keeping a historical narrative of a character moving through time in a historical unit, so that that student isn't just an observer of those events, but they become more compassionate of those events and how they happen, you know? Our students, when they did the Middle Ages, you know, they'd have their character from one of the medieval social classes from Europe, and they would keep all of their information on their own blog, so they would keep a running journal. And what we found was our kids would start to combine their stories with other students in the classroom or other kids at Garth School. So across schools, they were taking this historical information, they were personalizing it into this character they created, and they got so into it, they were so involved in the learning of it, that their characters grew entire lives beyond just the scope of how does the feudal hierarchy affect your peasant. You know, it became John's peasant was going to Tim's farm to escape the bubonic plague, or they had to go to a certain night in the class because their village was being attacked, and that's the way it worked. You owed grain and stuff to that night protected you, so you went to that night. And just amazing stories these kids would come up with, and they would go home and they would write for hours. And Garth and I never graded any of this. It was just there, and the kids did it and loved it. And they would make Minecraft movies of their feudal villages, and they would do parody songs. And it was just amazing to watch that. And for Garth and I, it gave us the ability to work with small groups of students or individual students as they needed help. Since it was autonomous, since kids had complete control over pace, place, and path, we didn't have to worry about that portion of it all the time. And we would assess kids throughout this, not for grades, we'd assess them for learning, so that we could see who we needed to talk to and help and counsel. And the other kids we just let go. We just let them go do what they needed to do. And it was a pretty inspiring time. It was a very confusing time as a teacher. I think this was one of the first times we were truly empathetic and our kids had complete ownership. And all of a sudden when you're a teacher, you're like, well, what do I do now? do they need me? What's my role? Because my role changed. And that's when I knew, that's when Garth and I knew we had something. We felt our role in the classroom changing for the first time. The other big project that we did with our students, and is still going on, so this is going to be the 10th year of it, was the online digital textbook. When I was student teaching, the students started this online digital textbook, first one in the world, I believe, completely student driven, student created, no points, no grades, usually done within the last 3-4 weeks of school, where most people are just hoping for summer. Our kids were creating information and collaborating and curating their work and other students' work. And it was truly kids building stuff for the sake of teaching. It was kids wanting their best work out there to help teach next year's class, or to help teach a class in England or Texas or wherever people might find our book at. And again, it was inspiring because you see kids working so hard in the last few weeks of school when we all just want to be on summer break, but they were really excited to be able to put their mark on history and to leave a digital footprint worth following. And it was great. It was absolutely great. And I still encourage teachers to let kids do that kind of work, to create resources for you. We have so many students that are so gifted and artistic and creative in so many ways that this complaint or argument that we don't have curricular resources, I just don't buy it. Sure, it takes time and PD and development, which I don't think schools are there yet to that point, but that's really what teachers need, is how do I get kids to create, and then how do we curate that for my kids next year, and how are all these kids linked and connected. And that's really, I think, where we want to go with education and where we're trying to go. And there's pockets of it, and it's a beautiful thing, but it's just that it's frustrating to try to get that at an institutional level, for sure. And you know, I talk about leaving the classroom and becoming an administrator. Now I'm kind of tasked with recreating what my classroom looked like on a district scope. And it's difficult, and I knew it'd be difficult, and I knew it would be damn near impossible, possibly impossible. But it's a long-term goal, and you know, year one in, I think we've laid some foundation. I think I've done some groundwork. This year will be interesting to see where we progress from there, and if people kind of come out in the spotlight as willing and accepting and able to do this, and then see what we can create with the time we have. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and the other two as well, and this whole experience of coming across Pennsylvania with me. If you want, you can check out the packing videos and how to take a long distance trip on a motorcycle, just in case you've never done that before and were thinking about it. But I will see you on the road after the conference. We do a little de-escalation and little mental work to put together the next 4 days of my life and all the people I see and all the inspiration I get. So enjoy your afternoon. I'm going to finish off my ride here in a couple hours, 3 hours and 40 minutes to be exact. I'll be in Boston, and can't wait to see everyone at BLC. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Remember to follow me at Professor Mike 1. That's the number 1 on the Twitter.